Okay, good morning, everyone. Anybody that's out there in the virtual world watching today, welcome. We'll call the Westgrade Municipal Council meeting to order. And if you could, before we get under the business, please stand. And we'll take a moment of reflection. Thank you. And Ms. Noble, could you address any issues with our online today? We have no issues, so welcome everybody that's tuning in.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Eccles. Before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both member of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hand physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is taking place across two meeting platforms, both on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom and cannot be done through YouTube at this time.
Thank you very much, Ashley. I'll ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yes, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on item 11.2.3 Z04-2024 Anderson, as my property backs onto the applicant's property.
Okay. So noted. That paper to the clerk. Anyone else? Seeing none, if it does arise at any time, it certainly can be declared. Delegations and presentations. We have no delegations scheduled for today. Public meetings, none of those either. Jamie? Comment period. Not seeing anybody in the audience that has a comment at this time. Is there anybody online, Ashley? No? Yeah. Okay, there's nobody online, so that's it. Unfinished business. Previous meeting, I don't think we had any. I'm not aware. Adoption of the minutes then. Down to the real business. We have two sets of minutes from the meeting of March 19th. Council. Would you like to move those? Moved by Councillor Shea and seconded by Councillor Forster. Thank you, Jeffrey Scott. Any errors or omissions there? Jeffrey, Councillor Shea.
It's more a procedural question. We have consolidated the bylaws at the end of the meeting into one motion, typically, if they're not contentious or requiring of discussion. When I started here on council, we used to do the minutes as part of a thing called the consent agenda, where they would all be a bunch of things at the beginning of the meeting would be bundled into one. Is that something that we could do to increase efficiency?
That's one of those operational procedural type questions that he's got the answer for. Jamie, please.
Through you, Mayor Eccles, if there are no errors or omissions with either set of minutes, that is something that we can look at doing moving forward to make the meetings a little more efficient.
Yep. Okay, we'll put that in place probably for the next meeting, but we'll continue doing them separately for today. The minutes of March 19th, the regular council meeting, moved and seconded. No other comments. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The public planning meeting minutes from March 19th. also in our package. So we have a mover and a seconder for those. Moved by Councillor Noon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Any errors or omissions? Comments on that motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. Committee and board reports. And we can receive all of these under one motion. We've got that. We have the police services minutes from February the 13th. And it's been a very busy meeting, that last one. We have 4 sets of minutes from the library board. November the 8th, 2023, December 3rd, 2023, January 10th, 2024, and February 14th, 2024. Do I have a mover to receive those minutes? Councillor Townsend and Councillor Hutchison. Any comments or questions? Councillor Hutchison, good.
Yeah, just curious why there seems to be such a backlog of minutes from the library. That's normally we get them a little quicker than that. I'm just curious why, was there something happen that we've gone back a few months on minutes? So some board member would like to comment on it?
Well, must be baseball season. We've got 3 members that are there. We've struck out. None of them want to talk. 1, 2, 3. Any staff? Or Jeffrey, please go ahead.
I can ask at the next meeting.
Okay, find that out. I'm thinking what it is. I'm going to assume that they were probably approved on each meeting. It's a matter of the board, the library board secretary, because they're not necessarily in this building as we receive them, but yeah, that's my thought of why it was. But they're for our information. Very good. Any other questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. Correspondence. Temp. We have a number of them in the package. There is one that we have in the correspondence package. It's been already, I'm not sure whether it was pulled or this way it was presented. At the last meeting, made note that on April 17th, I believe is the right date, that we're meeting with the other 2 municipalities that we share the Selby Municipal Airport. They were looking for an introduction letter, or I'm not sure what the title was, from the municipality of West Grey under my signature, under the mayor's signature. Put it together, and just like to say thank you to Ashley, Ms. Noble, for helping prepare that. After taking the comments of your council, that is in the package and will be presented. Any questions on that 11.1.1? That's what, or sorry, 10.11. Yep, really jumping ahead here. 10.1.1. Councillor Shea.
Are you looking for a motion to endorse this?
Yes,
I would so move.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Shea that that be forwarded on and be on the agenda or whatever, how it's going to be procedurally happen. Jamie, you got one?
Yes, through Mayor Eccles, I have that in consideration of correspondence received by Mayor Eccles, or received from Mayor Eccles respecting the mayor's statement for the joint Saugeen Municipal Airport members meeting. Council approved the statement as presented.
Good. Councillor Shea will move that. A seconder. Councillor Townsend. Any questions, comments on the Councillor Noon? Joyce?
Thank you. With our discussions at the last meeting to get this kind of prepared, I didn't realize that we were more on the making the decision that privatizing the airport was on the radar at this point. I thought we were going to attend the meeting and kind of get everybody's input then. So I just feel that's pretty strong in this introduction right now, that that we as a group are looking at more for privatization than in keeping it status quo with municipalities involved in this airport economic proposal. Anyways, that's just my views on that. Thank you.
Okay. As the author, I'm going to say, I don't know whether you saw yesterday on Bayshore Broadcasting, they picked up on it, and there was an article there on the radio yesterday as well too, and they kind of went that way. Say when putting it forward, it's that my interpretation of it, or what I was trying to express from the feeling was, we're kind of open. It's not privatization. Privatization is there. Maintaining what it is there. This is our introduction. The way I had written it to be interpreted was, we're just there to, hear both sides. We haven't, that's what I got from council. We haven't made up our mind. One of the other owners, I think, pretty much has made up their mind. They're getting out. But, this, to my mind, it was very neutral. Privatization's there, status quo's here, enhancing. That's how I had written it. After reading the interpretation from Bayshore, they kind of did the same thing as what you were. It was more on privatization, but the last letter in their report, or the last paragraph in their report that was on the radio yesterday was, but it seems that West Grey is open to all discussions and hasn't given a direction yet. So but the first 5 paragraphs talked nothing but, was all privatization. And the last one was, yeah, but they're open to everything. And that's where I was coming with the meeting. And I can say this, Joyce, at the meeting on April 17th, with your consent, that's the way I'm going to present it. That this is not, I think that's my interpretation of what council's feelings are right at the present moment. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor of it? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. The other correspondence, what is there? 17, oops, sorry, 19 of them there. Correspondence. Anyone in particular, or do I have a motion to receive as presented? Deputy Mayor moves to receive as presented. Councillor Hutchison, second that? Yep, very good. Any questions on that? Doug?
That's why I sort of had my hand up with you. You moved me forward.
Yes, we will make that exception, an amendment.
So number 3, City of Quinte West.
Yes.
Makes reference to housing and infrastructure support from the government, and given that they're into a $28 million West End trunk sewer main replacement in 2024, the ministry has a fund of 200 million. But as they mentioned, and I've heard rumors in the past, that 200 million isn't going to go very far when you consider the number of big areas that have to do with putting in water infrastructure. Basically, it has to do with water and sewer infrastructure to support housing is where they're coming from.
Correct.
And the ministry is pushing for housing, but yet in the meantime, just like we are, you can only build so many houses without building onto your water and sewer. So their last part of it says that, and further, that the province of Ontario be asked to invest more than the currently allocated 200 million into their housing enabling water system fund. So I think anytime that we can support increased funding to help do what we need to do, I think is a bonus. So I don't believe we've supported this. I didn't see any asterisks. So I'm thinking I would like to support the request to increase that funding envelope.
Oh boy. Procedurally. Go ahead, Jamie. How can we get this done?
Through Mayor Eccles, procedurally, we do have a motion on the floor, so that motion would need to be withdrawn first in order to introduce something like this, in order to proceed. So if the mover and seconder are open to withdrawing that motion and council has no objections, then we can just do that informally, and then Councillor Hutchinson can move a motion to support this piece of correspondence.
Deputy Mayor, it's your motion. How are you feeling this morning?
Wonderful. How are you, Mayor Eccles?
Excellent.
Well, I will withdraw for this one, sir, and then I will wait till it comes around again to pass them all. Thank you.
Don't let it happen again.
And I'll withdraw my second motion, my seconding of that motion.
Okay. Very good.
Back to you.
You're up again.
I would like to make a motion to support the resolution from the city of Quinte West regarding funding envelope for Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund.
I have a seconder. Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Nice warm and fuzzy you two today. The one thing that's a little different about this, if I could, from the chair on the motion that's on the floor, this one isn't going to the province. You mentioned the 200 million from the province that is for funding. This one is just to be slightly different. It's heading to the federal government to put in money on top. So it is certainly different, but trying to address the same issue that you were talking about, Councillor. Okay, any other comments or questions on that for supporting Quinte West on their housing funding? How's it read, Jamie?
Through your miracles, I have that in consideration of correspondence received from the city of Quinte West respecting housing funding. Council directs staff to send a letter of support for the resolution to the Prime Minister of Canada, the Federal Minister of Housing, the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Minister of Infrastructure, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Very good. Any final questions or comments? Councillor Hutchison.
I just will note too that in there, it talks about that this funding envelope is for municipalities with a population of less than 50,000. So I think they're just saying that we want to, share the pie sort of thing for the smaller municipalities. It's just wanted to note that in there.
Yep. Give us access to funding. Okay, any other questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Are there any other correspondence that we haven't let Jamie know that we want to pull? I know he was waiting patiently at his computer right up until 4:30 yesterday. Okay. Motion to receive the rest of the correspondence. Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Councillor Hutchison. Comments on the motion? Yes, Doug.
I just wanted to clarify that I didn't realize that we were to contact our clerk if we wish to pull correspondence. Is that a part of our policy? Is that a thing? Because I haven't done that in the past. But if that's what we need to do, then I'd like to know that we need to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, how would you like to handle that one?
Through your miracles, I always appreciate the heads up when council would like to pull something from the info pack. That way, it allows me time to craft the motion in advance of the meeting so that when we do get to the correspondence package, I've already got it written out for you.
Clerks like to be, very succinct. Don't like much on the coattails. No, not doing it. Anyways, just as a courtesy, yeah, if we could do that in the following up, I think some of us have. All right, motion's moved and seconded on the floor for receiving the rest of the correspondence, 10.1. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you. And that brings us down to staff reports. Oh, look at that. Manager of Public Works is here. Good morning, Mr. Aiken.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
And I believe you have another Boundary Road agreement. How many more we got? I know we,
This is the last one for 5 years. 5 years' time, we'll revisit them all again.
okay. Any other comments on this one?
It's very similar to what you've seen before with Southgate and Chatsworth. The only minor variation is Greyhounds has a slightly different winter control season. It starts a little later than us and ends a little earlier than us. But we do have, or both municipalities have a procedure to respond to events before and after the official commencement of the winter operations control. In the past, this has not been an issue. It worked well. Staff report, they have no concerns.
Okay. Any questions from any of the council? Then I'll need a motion to proceed. Councillor Townsend and Councillor New. Recommendation there is to proceed with the Boundary Road Agreement with Grey Highlands. No other questions on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Drinking water systems, 11.1.2. Mr. Aiken.
What you have in front of you is to acknowledge receipt of the 2023 annual summary reports for both the Durham Waterworks and the Newstat Waterworks. Both facilities operated within compliance in terms of their permits and licensing. Durham had a minor issue with chlorine residual, which we discussed while presenting the MOE inspection reports. So there was no threat to public health and safety, but overall, the facilities, the waterworks were well within compliance.
Very good. That is excellent. Any questions on? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yeah, on page 180 of the report, it talks about the total volume of water treated, the average day and the maximum day flows are high considering the population served. So my question is, why are they high? Do we have a reason why they are high considering our population?
Through you, your worship, what happens as a water distribution system ages, specifically when you have cast iron water mains, which is common to Durham and definitely not unique to West Grey. They will develop what I would call pinhole leaks over time. The West Grey supervisor is aware of this and is extremely proactive in looking for pinhole leaks that are escalating into actual water main breaks, and is consistently working with our service provider Veolia to do essentially drawdown tests on the standpipe to try to look for these. It's very difficult to actually locate them. He does have equipment that he can go monitor, essentially listen for leaks, but when they're pinhole, they're very difficult to locate. I think in the next few years, we'll have to consider more invasive projects like water main replacement, but I think it's just a natural occurrence as the infrastructure ages. And unfortunately, that's just the reality, and we're going to have to address it kind of piecemeal, I think.
So that leads me to a thought in terms of, since we are at a high level and we do have pressures in terms of water going forward, should we be looking at maybe setting up a regular restrictions on lawn watering during the summertime to prevent excess water being used?
Through your worship, we already have provisions like that, and we do work towards to enforce them. However, telling a handful of people to stop watering their lawns isn't going to solve this. So you know, it's just a matter of the infrastructure is aging and we need to take a proactive approach here.
So as we increase our underground construction of our water mains and whatnot, that'll help a little bit, right? So as we upgrade things, should help somewhat.
That would be my expectation, yes.
I do one other question under just further down on that page, talks about financial implications and talks about applying for a grant availability. And I'm just wondering, Housing Enabling Water System Fund. Are we planning on applying to that grant, or are we in the process? It says that we could be an ideal candidate.
Through your worship, yes, we are actively preparing an application for that project. And yes, it's focused on Durham and increasing the water supply.
Okay, anything further on the report? Seconder, yes. Mover and a seconder to receive the updated report on the drinking water systems for Newstead and Durham. Moved by Councillor Forrester, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. Thank you. Any further comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next one, 11.1.3. That's you again, Jeff.
This report is essentially a housekeeping issue. Veolia had a change in the manager who's looking after West Gray. So in the operational plan itself, there had to be a revision to who the manager is and who the QMS rep is. This does require coming back to council for endorsement for the mayor, CIO, and the manager to sign off on that.
Housekeeping, mover, Deputy Mayor Hutchison and Councillor Townsend. Any questions or comments on that? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So the next one. Talking about recycling. 11.1.4. And this has to do with Blue Box. And good morning. This one is from our environmental officer, Ms. Herber. Nicole, welcome this morning. And can you enlighten us any more on this opt-in, opt-out optic illusion that's happening here in the recycling world?
Good morning. Yes, this report, some little bit of background. In January of this year, Circular Materials Ontario required that municipalities transitioning on January 1st of 2025, that includes us in West Gray, to submit their intention to opt in or opt out of Blue Box Materials Management by March 15th of this year. Staff has provided an intention to Circular Materials by way of this report are seeking council approval to move forward and formalize the intention. This intention to CMO includes providing this council date on which a recommendation will be discussed and decided upon. The recommendations include opting out of curbside Blue Box collection for eligible sources and handing over the operational and financial responsibility to Circular Materials. By opting out, what this means is that the municipality is no longer going to take ownership of providing the services of curbside collection. That is our contract with Waste Management Incorporated. Opting in would mean that we continue to do that and receive compensation from Circular Materials to do so. So that's number one. Number two is to opt out of the collection of eligible sources at the Bentic and Durham waste sites and hand over the operational and financial responsibility as well to CMO. Both of these first ones have an implied cost from CMO of $0 to West Gray. The third recommendation is to opt in for Blue Box operations for eligible sources and act as a contractor to CMO with a compensation from CMO to West Gray of $1,638 per month. The fourth recommendation is to provide service to non-eligible sources during the transition period at a direct cost to the municipality, either through the levy or user pay. There is a very well-produced backgrounder report or presentation produced by the Continuous Improvement Fund that has a lot of good context to all the different components of this transition piece.
So I'm taking it we've got one of four options here to kind of investigate going forward.
There's actually four different decisions to be made. One of them is, does council wish to continue to manage a waste collections contractor to provide the curbside Blue Box recycling collection? Or do we want to pass that responsibility over to Circular Materials for them to manage it? Because in 2026, Circular Materials is going to be managing it anyway.
Councillor Shea.
Thank you. Good morning. The number 2 is to opt out of doing stuff at the landfill sites. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. This is specifically focusing on Blue Box materials, and that's your cans, bottles, other containers, papers, and cardboard.
But isn't option 3 for us to take over providing Blue Box services at the landfill site?
Yes, so the one piece of the depots is the actual collection of those Blue Box materials from the landfill site to a processing facility. The second piece of what happens at the depots is the folks that manage it. And currently that is West Gray staff. And in addition to managing those Blue Box materials, they also manage all the other different diversion streams and the burial, the waste portion of it. So CMO has offered that they are able to, that they will take on responsibility for the collection of the Blue Box items, which is the cans, bottles, papers, and cardboard, and they will manage that. So they would pay for the bins and the movement of those bins from our depot to a processing facility. The other piece of the depot with number 3 is the staff required to monitor those bins. So either we can say that, no, CMO, go ahead, you guys please manage that for us, which gets into a whole lot of other agreements, or we will receive some compensation to oversee those Blue Box areas in addition to everything we already oversee at the landfill.
So the Blue Box operations at the landfill would remain unchanged to the end user?
That's correct.
Okay. And the ineligible sources, which includes commercial and municipal facilities, commercial users would be prohibited from taking stuff to the landfill?
So with the ineligible sources, they are listed on page 5. What CMO has proposed is that there is a duplicate area created at the depot where the ineligible sources go to deposit their materials so that they have an accurate breakdown of what's coming from an eligible source and what's coming from a non-eligible source. The other option for managing that is that the municipality provides CMO with a number of non-eligible sources within the community, and they apply that percentage through a formula and then charge us back for the non-eligible users that are using the Blue Box service at the depot.
Could that also formula be used to apply to curbside pickup at ineligible, like downtown, the residential and commercial are very mixed?
As I understand it, it can. And I think that that's the best approach because small downtown cores like we have in West Grey are very blended and very complicated to separate. And without creating a lot of extra work and confusion for the folks that are setting out their materials, I think that that would be the best way to approach it. And that's recommendation number 4.
And we don't have an estimate of what that would cost at this point.
That's something that we'd have to talk to CMO about.
I assume other municipalities throughout Ontario, especially the ones who are in advance of us in doing this, have arrived at formulas like this. I assume there's sort of a norm sort of developing.
I'm not sure what the norm is or if there's an average for that, but there are certainly municipalities that have already transitioned because the transition period began in 23. But those agreements are all going to be very specific to the circumstances of each municipality. So I don't have a number of what is an average or what's been happening in other areas.
Okay, and then finally, this would be for a transition period of our own beyond the larger transition period. I understand, and that at the end of the transition period, the rules would change. Is that correct?
Yes, so the transition period for West Grey is technically the calendar year of 2025. And January 1 of 2026 is when full producer responsibility takes effect. So we're fortunate in that we have a very small transition period, whereas other municipalities have gone almost 2 years in this process. So there's more information coming from Circular Materials all the time as they come up with different scenarios where they have to interpret the legislation and best apply as you know, it works for everybody. But yes, for us, 2025 is our transition period. And my recommendation is that the less changes we make, the easier it is for staff and residents, because in 2026, Circular Materials will be taking over the Blue Box program regardless of what we do. So,
but at these same rates, that we'd still be getting the $1,600 per month, and the zero charge for curbside and zero charge for, like, this would all stay in place after the transition.
correct. Circular Materials has advised that $1,600 per month compensation for operating the depots would be in place after transition takes effect in January of 26.
And Circular Transition is it's an industry-led umbrella group, is that right?
Circular Materials has
Yes.
been tasked with executing the Waste Diversion Transition Act. So it's their responsibility to hire contractors to, on behalf of the producers of everything that goes into the Blue Box, to go out and collect those materials at their cost.
And do you think that they have an interest in making the burden to the producers as light as possible?
I can't speak to what their interests may be. I know that I've been part of many webinars where many municipalities are present, and they're definitely hearing concerns from all over and trying to make the process as fair as possible.
Okay, well, I'm sure
Does that help?
we're in good hands with your stewardship on this issue. Thank you.
Ooh. Is that the wave down there? The Blue Jays are back in. Yep, okay. Start with Councillor Hutchison.
Yeah, so I see a lot of gray areas in this. I like to think of maybe the term oxymoron when you think of full producer responsibility. They may be taking on the responsibility, but they're not taking on the full cost. When you look at the non-eligible sources here, like business, commercial, institution, even our municipal building, we're covering the cost of recycling the blue box material from here. So to me, that wasn't the original plan. I don't think going forward into this thing with the government, it was like the producers were to take this on, and they were to recycle and we had very little cost involved. But to me, now it's a bit of a hodgepodge because like you said, we may be able to pick up the commercial or core area blue box material, but how does that fit into, they want us to pay for that part of picking up the blue box in our cores, right, for commercial businesses. So that creates, to me, difficulties, I think, and gray areas. So yeah, like there's a lot of things in here. So the other thing, I think, okay, so they're going to take on the responsibility of picking up the blue box material. So does that mean now we have 2 trucks running all over West Gray? Because right now we have 1 truck picks up garbage and blue box material. So now we're going to have 2 trucks, one picking up the blue box material and another one picking up garbage, running all over West Gray. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where we're headed. Am I wrong to presume that?
Theoretically, no, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But since waste and recycling has been co-collected in the same vehicle for quite some time, the negotiations that Circular Materials has with the potential curbside collection agencies are going to be mirrored to some effect with the municipalities, because it really doesn't make any sense to put a second truck on the road. That's why they started developing trucks that have dual compartments, especially in the rural areas, because the transportation is the biggest cost involved in the collection. And with respect to the non-eligibles, your concerns are exactly what we've seen in the correspondence from Township of Perry and Chatham-Kent rather. There has been concerns and pushback from municipalities because duplicating a service that already exists, it doesn't align with the climate action change plan that was just passed recently. So there's efforts being made to try to align the 2 programs as much as possible.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, I like the way you have it laid out in terms of recommendations, but again, I just think that the producers are coming up short on their end of it, and hopefully over time, if there's enough pushback, I see there's a resolution at the end of the package to try to make some changes. Just wonder, how's that going to work in terms of if the businesses and commercial and institutional aren't paying for their blue box, then that's going to fall back on us. Are we planning on charging them for the service then, rather than the municipality paying? Is that correct? How that's going to work?
That's an option for council, is to decide to have a user fee for the non-eligible sources to use the facilities at the transfer station or be included in the curbside collection. There have been some municipalities that have decided to create a completely separate collection day for that to define it more. But when you have a smaller community, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, so I'll leave it there. Like I said, I think there's a lot of gray areas here, so hopefully this will become clearer as time goes on, but I'm a little bit hesitant.
Councillor Townsend. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. I know we've heard in the past about the blue box collection, and if stuff is deemed contaminated, then it ends up coming back to our landfill at our cost. What's how is this going to change? Is this going to change that? Or are we like, if we're getting 1,638 a month, are they soon going to recoup that plus some from us, saying that things are contaminated and more items are ending up back in the landfill?
That's a really good question. I know that there is a contamination threshold that needs to be met. I am highly doubtful that those contaminated materials would be shipped back to our landfill. What would probably happen is they apply a formula based on the contamination, and then a fee is assessed back to West Grey in order to, discourage contamination and put more effort into monitoring the materials. Part of monitoring the materials is going to be the responsibility of whomever the collector is that CMO hires to collect curbside. So if they see a bag that's not sorted, they're not going to collect it. And that resident is going to have to speak to CMO, and they will explain why it's not collected. And then it's up to that resident to sort their materials. I believe that we have been improving our operations at both Bentic and Durham, providing more engagement and education with folks that come in on why we do need to sort. And that's something that we still have a duty to do, because we do not want to see anything that's recyclable going into the landfill.
And if I can, just one more question, a clarification, and I'm pretty sure I've got this straight, but the 1,638 they're talking, that covers both sites. That's not per site, that's the two sites combined.
Correct, that is for both sites, and I've provided CMO with all kinds of data that they requested, what's involved at our site, so it's for both sites per month.
Through Mayor Eccles, just for clarity for council, I think, and Ms. Heber, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but the recommendation is not for council to select one of the four options. It's for all of the options to be carried out through one recommendation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, anything further? Jeffrey? Councillor Shay?
I move the adoption of the recommendation.
Councillor Hutchison? And yes, Councillor Hutchison, further comment?
Given all this, are we looking at changing, and maybe this will be based on, it'll become clear, I guess, in times, but are they looking at using the larger bins for collection where they use the trucks with the arms instead of what we do now, manually lifting the blue boxes? Are we going that direction?
The collection contracts are going to be changing, obviously, with transition coming up. The general trend in the curbside collection industry is toward carts. I can't say that I've heard anything specific to West Grey, but when you look around, that's what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, so I think in some ways they're a good thing. The concern I have is, first of all, when you have a container like that, it's not, you can't see in it, who knows what's in there, and then it gets dumped into a truck. But I guess they do use some kind of X-ray or something, I think, to try to pick out some of the contamination. But I do think the positive side of it is we don't have boxes when the wind blows that the blue box stuff all goes down the road, and then we have to go along and pick it up because the wind blew it down the road. So at least it keeps it contained that way. But there's this whole thing of what's really in those boxes and how do you monitor that, right?
The newer trucks, they are equipped with cameras, and the carts have RFIDs on them so that they can make a connection between where an improperly sorted cart is, and then make a connection back with that resident. That's what's happening in the newer systems.
And because, we'll get to you in a moment, Councillor Noon, but because I control, this might be slightly off. But I've got the mic. There is a company that's right here in West Gray. I'm not sure that we, going forward, that our only option is for carts. There's a company in West Gray that has a different approach. And maybe we look to that when our contract, is our contracts coming up at the end of the year? Or close to it with, or into 2025 with Waste Management?
The current waste collection curbside contract expires in the summer of 2026. So based on decisions made today, staff will begin speaking with the current waste collections contractor to make amendments.
Yeah. So some of that will come into play here as well too. One specific question on eligible sources. Specified retirement homes and long-term care homes operated by a municipality or a nonprofit. I guess we've got a new long-term care home coming into Durham being built. Is it going to be eligible or non-eligible? Because it's not operated by this municipality. It's not operated by a nonprofit.
I believe I can confirm, but anything that's operated by a municipality or a county would be considered eligible.
Okay. If somebody sits on the long-term care home, you may want to take that into play at the county. Would be a tremendous cost for the long-term care home. Sorry, Joyce, go ahead. Councillor Noon.
Okay, for clarification, and I know the contract would be up June 30th of 2026. So the transition from waste management to the CMO, as far as budgeting, like in 2025, because we either, opt in, opt out, whatever, but how are the costs going to be affected? Do we still continue with their percentage increase with waste management? Even though getting into the transition, I'll start with that for now to get your opinion on that.
That's also a really good question because the contract currently services co-collection. So what's going to happen is the blue box portion of that is going to have to come out of it, and the contract would be amended to only include curbside waste collection and any transfer services that happen at the Durham waste site. And then whatever's negotiated would apply to only the waste stream.
And then with this $1,600, that if we go with that option, that's if everything's marketable that CMO would administer. Because again, currently our contamination of materials are charged back to West Gray. Like when our initial contract with Waste Management was done, we were generating revenues from marketable product. That's no longer in existence. Plus, in addition, they are charging us now for contamination because of the manpower to take these materials out if they're contaminated, and then with the shipping and that. So I just am uncomfortable agreeing to something like that when we've already are experiencing it now, and how expensive it is to West Gray with contamination. So that's more of a comment than anything. And yeah, I hit on those two things right there. The other thing is, we've got the motion on the floor. Are we going with the motion based on staff's recommendations under the analysis? because staff is saying to opt out for number 1, opt out for number 2, opt in for number 3, and number 4, it's just kind of still investigating. So I'm not just too sure exactly what we're voting for with the recommendation on the floor currently. If I could have some kind of an explanation as to what we're exactly voting on. Thank you.
Motion read, Mr. Clerk.
The Three Miracles, the motion on the floor, the motion in the staff report, the recommendation rather in the staff report is for all 4 of those items to be actioned. So it's a 4-part recommendation similar to that which we have seen in previous reports for various items where it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not council selecting one of these 4 options. It's a 4-part recommendation. So we would be opting out of curbside blue box for eligible sources and handing that over to CMO, opting out of blue box for eligible sources at the Bentic and Durham waste sites and handing that over to CMO, opting in for blue box operations for eligible sources and acting as a contractor with CMO with a compensation of $1,600, and then providing service to non-eligible sources during the transition period. So it's a 4-part recommendation. It's not options to be chosen. It's all together. Those are the steps or the actions that staff are recommending to council.
Councillor Shay.
We've heard a couple of people talk about the contamination fee. Can you give us a brief overview of how impacted we are by chargebacks regarding to a blue box contamination currently?
I personally have not seen any contamination fees on invoices since I've been in this role. And the price of the various materials collected in the blue box does fluctuate, and that would play a role in how the invoices look for the collection and processing of the blue box materials. And as I said earlier, I've been working very closely with our staff and also with the waste management staff to figure out how to improve the cleanliness of our blue box materials.
I would have thought that if we're getting out of the blue box business and CMO is taking it over, that would be their job. And that if our blue boxes are not fully uncontaminated or fully clean, that would be CMO's responsibility to further educate the public and supervise the collection and take care of all that. We're not in the blue box business anymore.
That's correct. Beginning January of 2025, the recommendation is that we are not in the business of managing the blue box anymore. However, there is the matter of keeping those blue box materials out of our waste stream. That's why we still have a duty to support the blue box program.
Sir Price.
Maybe I'm premature on this, but going to those larger bins where the arm of the truck dumps it in, and I realize there's a camera on it. My concern is though, so you've got 5 properties that are very genuine and very loyal to ensuring that it's not contaminated. But then you have that person that doesn't care. So does that mean that whole load now is contaminated, or do they still, when they're at the MRF, still sort it? Like I know you had mentioned that they would, the camera would reflect that, oh, you've contaminated it. So overall, is that whole load now contaminated, that they would just, you know, it wouldn't even go to the MRF? But I mean, this was CMO again, it's responsibility, but again, when we're trying to keep it out of our garbage stream, how that's going to impact, like with people just not caring.
Yeah, that's a good question too. I have worked in a MRF for a couple of years, and I can assure you there are many different parts in the process, from the tipping floor to the pre-sorting and the final sorting areas where materials are sorted out. I think rejecting an entire load based on 1 or 2 stops that aren't properly sorting is pretty rare. I don't think that would happen.
it'd have to be quite a bit of used motor oil in that blue box for that to happen. Okay, any further questions? I don't think that we're in this position, just my opinion, we're in this position and trying to figure out where we're going by best practices. Everybody is transitioning and it's a whole new way of recycling here. Not as much about this tin can and that tin can and glass, being washed and going in. It's around the pickup and what our community is going to see. As we said, whether it's going to be, now it's going to be 2 trucks possibly going down the road, and that's what it seems like we've got here. It's going to be the reception from the producers out there of how their blue boxes are being picked up. The biggest thing is if we can keep those products out of our landfill, because creating a new landfill is way more expensive going forward, and a lot more headaches on trying to get that done. Unless we can convince the Ministry of Environment to repurpose some of those. Well, they're deep pits, aren't they, that are being created by some gravel pit operators out there, that maybe we can, that's how we can refurbish some of those pits. Walker Group does that quite regularly down in the Niagara region. Anyways, sorry, Mr. Clerk, I digress again. Stay on topic. Yes, I will. Okay, we close. One more comment. Councillor New. Joyce?
For clarification, because this is starting 2025, the Waste Diversion Ontario application, that would still be completed for 2024's diversion, that we would be compensated?
So the data call is no longer required. The 22 report was the very last one that West Grey would have had to have submit.
And just one final question. To my understanding, back in my municipal days, I was almost certain, but maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I had the understanding from the staff that looked after the billing or the payments that there was an extra bill come in for contaminated materials outside of, like the waste management would have for their curbside and the bin rentals. But then there was an extra fee for the contamination. If maybe we could look into that further.
I can definitely look into it. I haven't seen one since I've been here though.
Okay. Change is always difficult to handle. We want to have as much information as we can on this, because it's definitely a change from what we've been doing for quite a few eons, I guess, on blue boxes. And that had nothing to do with your jacket today. Nicole, you were wearing that blue? No, okay, fine. Yep. Okay, any further comments? Why did I look to the right? Yeah. Councillor Hutchison, Doug?
I'm just curious with why the resolutions are attached to the report then. Are we doing something with them?
Further, Jamie?
Through you, Mayor Eccles, those resolutions were previously supported by council. I think the author of the report included those as just a point of reference to show that other municipalities are taking a position on the eligible versus ineligible sources and making that known to the provincial government. But those correspondence are something that West Grey has previously supported, so there's no action on that required.
Okay. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. What are we doing on time? Everybody's good? What? Okay. Deputy Mayor says he's going to take a 2-minute break to get up and stretch for a little bit. Thank you very much, Nicole. This is a challenging time, certainly for staff and going forward with this, and look forward to how it's going to roll out. Thank you for your work so far. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll be back I'll say we'll get back to order here. Ashley, you've got us back up and going. Recording. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And that's it for Manager of Public Works and that reports. We're down to Manager of Planning. Mr. Smith, thank you for being able to come in. And 11.2.1. Welton.
Mr. Mayor, Council, file ZA 02-2024, Welton, also known as the Sunville subdivision. The purpose of the zoning amendment is to implement a condition of draft plan approval that requires, that follows the recommendation of an environmental impact study that was done for the plan of subdivision quite a few years ago. Requires the preservation of a woodlot or part of a woodlot and a setback to the woodlot. I'm going to ask Ashley to go to a picture. We're going to look at just a small zoning picture. Right there. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner, the words woodlot setback, no foundations, and woodlot setback, no excavations. That's basically the area that's going to be zoned into the 505 zone. We circulated the application to agencies. We looked at the provincial policy. We looked at Grey County official plan, West Grey official plan, and the zoning bylaw, and we found no issues. And we recommend approval of the special zone. When we looked at the zone, there are sufficient areas still left outside of the exception zone to build a house on the remainder of the original zoning on the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave, how would you like to proceed with this? So we've had the public meeting. No comments. Does anybody want to move the motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Councillor Noon. Any questions on the recommendation? Jeffrey, Councillor Shea.
Thank you. This what you call the exception, I guess, affects the current developer. Would it still be on title and affect the subsequent landowner? The idea that there can be no foundations, no excavation on the back of their property?
The zoning words specifically say, so when you look at a zoning map, it has R3505. When you look that up in the zoning bylaw, the words specifically say no foundations, no buildings, no structures.
That's permanent.
That's in the zoning. Yeah, so unless council changes the zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's attached to the property, not the owner. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. The next one, 11.2.2, zoning amendment Roberts Loft Planning. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, Council files ZA 03-2024, Roberts, submitted by Loft Planning as the consultant. The rezoning is a condition of provisional consent that was granted by Committee of Adjustment on March 5th. That consent approved the severance of approximately 1.4 hectares and retained lot of 3.6. The application would rezone property from A3 restricted agriculture and natural environment to an R1A unserviced residential, and we're revising the natural environment zone to match the county official plan for hazard and natural environments. We circulated the application to the agencies. We reviewed the provincial policy statement, the County of Grey official plan. We took a look at the zoning bylaw. In this particular case, it's this portion of Priceville is within a secondary settlement area within the Grey official plan, which is why we're suggesting a residential zoning on it, an R1A, which is the unserviced residential zone for the property as opposed to an agricultural zone. We recommend approval of the zoning amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions, comments? a fair bit of it at the public meeting. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Hutchison, second by Councillor Townsend. To move forward with the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That one's carried. Okay. The next one, we're down to 11.2.3, and note that Councillor Hutchison has declared a conflict with this one. And
Mr. Mayor, Council,
Mr. Smith.
file Z04-2024 for Anderson. This application is an application to remove an H holding provision on the property. The H holding was put on the property at the request of Saugeen Valley a number of years ago, and the requirement was for an environmental impact study to be completed for the property. And there was also a requirement to take a look at a no service agreement between West Gray and the property owner because the property doesn't sit fully on a municipal open and service municipal roadway at this particular time. So we do have a no service agreement with the property that allows for access onto Arthur Street. It also allows for an exemption to services, sewer and water. Again, there is no sewer and water actually at all on Arthur Street at the moment. So that exemption for services goes on and includes that. An environmental impact study was submitted. It was reviewed by Grey County Ecological Planning. And the reason why is that Saugeen Valley is no longer in that business. So it was reviewed by Grey County, and just so happens that Michael Cook at the county was the Saugeen Valley planner that reviewed it there. There were no concerns with the removal of the holding in part, which will allow Mr. Anderson to cut down trees and to establish a building envelope and to build a home. We recommend approval of the bylaw removing the H holding. Thank you.
thank you, Dave. Any questions? Banner on this one? And I'll ask, is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconder, Councillor Forster. And any further questions on the motion? Call the question, and all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hutchison, oh, somebody's found him. Thank you very much, Doug. All right. That's it for that. Director of Legislative Services, Clerk. Mr. Eckensweiler, you have a report for information. Jamie.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Eccles. This is a report for information purposes on 2023 bylaw enforcement statistics. So just providing a high-level overview of the report, there were 44 bylaw enforcement investigations initiated in 2023. The most common investigations were related to property standards. The goal of bylaw enforcement is to foster compliance with the municipality's bylaws. And just looking at a breakdown of complaints received for regulatory bylaw complaints, 19 were received, property standards complaints, 20 were received, and animal control received 5 complaints. Of the 44 investigations initiated in 2023, as of the writing of this report, 6 files remain active, being specifically 5 property standards and 1 zoning. Along with responding to complaints and performing inspections, bylaw enforcement is responsible for other administrative activities such as monitoring property cleanups, laying charges, attending court as required, and preparing briefs and defense material for property standards appeals as required. And as noted at the beginning of my overview, this report is for information purposes.
Very good. An update on what is happening there. Any questions or comments on that report? Have somebody to move to receive? Oh, sorry, jumped too quick. Councillor New.
No, thank you. And maybe this is something that maybe we need the bylaw enforcement in person in attendance, but just overall, I see that only 6 remain active, but overall are the like more simplified enough that the bylaw enforcement officer visiting the property owners, that they're rectified immediately, that he doesn't have, well, according to this, there's only 6 outstanding, so and that's good. But I just want to know, like, what the turnaround usually, like, or if it's fairly simple and good response that the people are complying to. Thank you.
Through Mayor Eccles, I can't get into specifics about the outstanding files, but what I can say is that it varies on complaints. So there are some complaints with respect to property standards that the property cleanup is relatively simple. The owner of the property does want to comply because they don't want to have to go through an order and have the municipality potentially come in and potentially have fines levied against them. So depending on the circumstances, the compliance can be achieved rather quickly, but again, depending on the circumstances and the time of year, there's a time frame that must be allowed for property cleanup specific to property standards, if that's your question. So for example, in the winter, we have to provide more lead time for the property owner to clean up their property to bring it into compliance because of weather and things like that. If we don't, and that were to go to court, the judge would look at the time frame that we allowed them to clean up, and if it wasn't deemed to be reasonable, then we could be responsible for that. So just depending on the situation will depend on how long it takes to clean up or rectify or come into compliance with our bylaws.
Anything else? Councillor Shay. Jeff?
And I understand it's common practice that since these are all complaint generated, that the complainants are advised of the outcome of the process?
So through your miracles, when we do finally close off a bylaw complaint file, the complainant is notified that the file has been closed, whether or not there's an infraction that has been verified or not. So if, for example, a complaint was made and bylaw enforcement staff looked through the bylaw to determine whether or not there was an infraction, and it was determined that there was no infraction, a letter would be sent to the complainant noting that the file's been closed as there was no contravention of the bylaw. In the event that there was an infraction, such as, again, for example, a property cleanup, after that property has been cleaned up, the complainant would receive a letter noting that the file has been closed because the property has been brought into compliance. So there is follow-up on that.
Anything else? No. Do we have a mover and a seconder to receive the report as presented? Councillor Townsend and Councillor New. Thank you. Anything further on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right. That's it for staff reports. Questions? Any questions? Council members? Councillor Townsend.
Just wondering on an update on the police building. If there's anything, where we're at with that. We're into April now.
I don't know. I don't see anybody jumping real quick. Carl, Director Shiprick, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. So our tender was issued in March. We've received numerous questions and numerous requests for copies of documents, so that's good. Hopefully that means we're going to receive a lot of bids. The closing date is April 11th. Thursday, April 11th is the closing date. So look forward to a report coming into the council meeting after that with our recommendation for whatever contractor ultimately is chosen.
Councillor Shay. Jeffrey?
There was a public meeting and presentation of the results of the Durham Creek study 2 months ago, something like that. And the people there, the consultants said that they would be making a presentation to council. Is that scheduled or is that in the near future?
We don't know when. I'm not sure what date they have proposed. Carl?
Yes, thank you for the question. We were told that they would be making a presentation. We haven't seen the final documents yet. There was a draft of the report at that public meeting that they were sort of presenting. Yeah, we haven't seen the final copy of that or the final version. So when that final version is completed, then yeah, they will be making a presentation to council. I believe that they've received an extent. The issue at the time was a deadline that they had to meet. And I believe they did receive an extension to those deadlines. I don't know exactly. Jeff might know better, but I don't know what the exact date was of the extension, but we can find that out.
Okay. Anything else? We did, just when you said extension, staff did make a 1-week extension on the police services building at the request of some of those bidders to be able to, with a couple of issues. Carl?
Yes, thank you for the question. So there was a concern because the tender for the long-term care building and the police station were closing on the same date. So some of the bidders were proposing the bid on both projects, and a lot of local contractors were working on quotes for both projects. So they did request an extension, and we granted an extension from 1 week, from April 4th to April 11th for the police station.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No. That's a private matter. Thank you very much. Got to be back here prepared for public meeting. Doug, go ahead. Councillor Hutchison.
I'm just curious, but probably should ask that when we had our other director, but maybe our CEO will know the answer. Are we doing any kind of promotion for a cleanup? I know Earth Day is April 22nd, I believe, this year. Is there anything on the books for West Gray Cleanup Day?
I will have to check with our environmental officer and see what, if there's anything sort of planned. I'm just not sure myself at this point. I will check that.
Okay. I think there are some local service clubs that are planning, roadside cleanup generally and whatnot around that date. But yeah, well, obviously the acting CEO will get that information back to you, and what we get out will be fine. No other questions? Move on to bylaws. And on bylaws, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excuse me. Jamie, what you got on that?
Through your miracles, if no one wants any of them pulled separately, it would be that bylaw numbers 2024-029, 2024-030, 2024-031, 2024-032, and 2024-033 be passed and enacted.
Very good. Councillor Hutchison.
Being that I declared a conflict, do I have to not vote on the bylaws? How does that work in terms of conflict on bylaw 0 to 24-30?
Interesting. Yes. Go ahead, Jim.
Through your miracles, I cannot provide conflict advice, so that will be up to you on how you want to proceed with that one.
We will see how the motion is put forward, and then you can make that declaring that Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Eccles, so just a question of interest, would we pull that one item and then do the others and pass that on its own? Is just so I understand for clarity. Thank you.
I'm going to make a thought on procedural there. Yes, I think we can do that. But I'll get confirmation from my clerk.
Through your miracles, yes, you are correct. We can do that. So if it's council's wish, we can do bylaws 2024-029, 031, 032, and 033 in one motion, and then we can do the other one separately. So in this case, it would be that bylaw 2024-029, 2024-031, 2024-032, and 2024-033 be passed and enacted.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison, seconder for those four. Councillor Townsend. Thank you, Doug. We have 4 bylaws on as under consent. Any questions? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. So we have bylaw number 2024-030. Mr. Hutchison.
My question is, do I need to do another declaration of conflict, or maybe I should have include that in my original declaration that I was including the bylaw?
I thought you put it in your original one, but.
Well, I put the item on the agenda, but not.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jamie.
Through your Mayor Eccles, as stated previously, I cannot provide conflict advice. However, if you would like your declaration form back to amend it, I will certainly provide that to you, but it is up to you on whether or not you're declaring on this bylaw.
So I will add it to my declaration to add the bylaw 2024-030. Thank you.
So we have a bylaw that's on the table. I need a mover and a seconder. Before I even take that, Councillor Hutchison is declaring a conflict on this and will not be participating in the vote. Okay, mover, Councillor Forrester and Councillor Shea. Thank you. Any questions on the motion to approve bylaw the 2024-030? Anderson. No questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. And Mr. Hutchison is back participating. New business. Notice was given previously by Councillor Shea. Do you want to speak to that notice of motion? Councillor Shea. Jeff?
Sure, briefly. I'm on the library board, and the library was involved in a renovation to the front of the building in Neustadt that a lot of people thought was not sufficiently well aesthetically designed. I understood from the library staff that a minor renovation turned into a larger renovation based on some discoveries during the process, and that some quick decisions were made about, given weather and the fact that the front of the building was removed, that a quick renovation solution had to be arrived at. One was, and that it's my understanding that it does not necessarily need to be considered a final version of that renovation. It could be conceived of as a stopgap measure. A lot of Neustadt residents were not happy. Technically, the municipality has responsibility for the maintenance and upkeep of the buildings that capital in specific of the buildings that they provide to the library. Traditionally, though, the municipality has granted the library a fair amount of free rein on executing sort of capital improvements. And so while it is on one hand a municipal responsibility, I would more characterize it, and did in this motion, as a shared responsibility. And so I think that the library and the municipality should work together to explore options for improving the facade renovation that happened in Neustadt. So this is just a fairly soft motion to enter into discussions between the municipality and the library on what could be done within the current budget allocations or future budget allocations.
So with that, I take it you're still letting the motion stand and moving it?
Yes, as I say, it's a fairly soft motion. And I just basically wanted to have the conversation at council and at the library board. If council chooses not to engage at this point, I won't have my feelings hurt. But just thought we should have a little bit of discussion about it.
Okay. So, the motion has been introduced. The way it's written, good. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Hutchison. Okay. All right, we've got the motion on the floor. This is introduced. Councillor Hutchison, good?
Yeah, so my understanding is that, yes, the municipality does look after the maintenance of the buildings and does the renovations and whatnot. So I'm curious, I don't understand what happened here in terms of if the library went ahead and did the renovations, would the municipality not have been the ones that okayed that and said, okay, this is, the library says this is what we're gonna do, and the municipality says, okay, that's fine, like whether it's through our building department or whatever. I just don't know what happened that it created an issue. Like, I don't have the background. Can you explain that? Shay?
My understanding is that a fairly simple renovation, like replacing a window, we would basically just trust the library staff's judgment to execute that. They would include the amount of the cost of that in their annual budget request. If it's approved, then we're not going to, Chief Building Officer could chime in if he chose to. We're not going to sort of micromanage something like replacing a window at the municipal level. When discoveries were made in the middle of that further renovations were urgently required, I believe the library staff just asked the contractor who was doing the window to just carry on and do whatever was necessary. I don't know if that answers.
Maybe I want to refer to our building inspector in terms of maybe there was something missing in the procedure there, or maybe we should have been more involved. I don't know. Can we ask the building inspector?
We have continued to work collaboratively with the library on this project and other projects. The condition of the rot behind the window and the structure kind of pushed it into more extensive replacement than what was originally planned, and it was in cold weather, and so it needed to be fixed. I have spoken with the CEO, chief librarian, and we'll look at options of what we can bring forward in a future meeting, whether it's painting, so it's more conducive to the color of the stone. What she was wanting to change the shutters, which are on the upper part anyway, so just to make it more flow and cohesive instead of stark different colors. But yeah, the condition of that former bay window was significantly damaged. So it had to be dealt with.
So from my understanding, then the renovation was done, but people weren't happy with the renovation, and therefore now we want to fix it. That's what we're basically saying in this case?
Gonna look to, yes.
Library board members. This is a proactive gesture to indicate to the community that the municipality and the library are actively discussing this. I'm pleased that this acting CAO and CEO are discussing it. The motion almost seems redundant, but we're just trying to send a signal to concerned citizens that we take their concerns seriously.
Anything else? From the chair, I'm going to say one thing. I think this project kind of brought up the old question, who's responsible for what and who does what. And there's been a fair bit of confusion from the public on knowing that the library board is an autonomous board. It acts or gets its regulations and its functions and procedures from the Library Act itself, from the province. Yes, it's somewhat with the municipality. We have a library, but to have a library, you'll have a board that's separate, that's out here. And really, as council, we've got no control over that other than approving the funds to maintain the library, and the library board is the one that proposes that to council. And yeah, this one is just who's responsible for what. Municipality is certainly responsible for the building, the actual bricks and mortar structure. But over the years, there's been a very clear definition that any of those capital upgrades by the leasee, the library would carry out those, whether it's window replacement, door replacement, flooring, and whatnot. But council has the funds there. There's been a bit of confusion, I think, there on who's to do what, and come to a head here with this one that didn't meet some of the expectations. Maybe one of the things moving on from this, that yes, we'll work with the library to try to appease or meet the community's expectations in Newstead. But maybe we should just have a public meeting at some point in time with the library and the council, and just really get it clear, one for the public and one for the library board and one for council, basically as an education, that this is who's responsible for what and what council has delicately delegated to the library, to the board, what their functions will be and what were, the expectations from council and what the expectations from the library. Because if anybody's been watching social media, you can, I think that there's a divergence on who's to do what out there at this point in time. The motion that's on the floor is to say that the municipality, and I think when this comes into its municipality advancing some funds or in with our building of making it up to the community or up to the library board's expectations of what they need to deliver their service from. So that's my comments on the motion. Deputy Mayor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles, and I'm going to be very brief. I think this is a really good opportunity to really enhance our communications to the public on what took place. And I think that if we would have done that action throughout, we wouldn't be where we are. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. We have the motion moved and seconded, and this motion is directly towards looking at the project and seeing whether we can enhance it on the renovated. And it may be looking at what dollars is going to be, but that's in the investigation of what we can do. I think that's what you're meaning by this. Thanks, Councillor Shea. Okay, we're clear on what the motion is and what we're voting on. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, any other notice of motions? Don't look down at that end. There's be an arm come up here sooner or later. Yeah. Well, there is no new, yes. Any new business? And I guess I stated would give direction to maybe have not a delegation, but a public meeting, or set up, ask staff to be able to set up a meeting between council and the library board, just as a information training session. I'm looking to our 3 library board members on council would that be just to get a grasp of where we're going so that we don't end up with some of this setting the standards for a good working relationship with council and the board. Got that? Looking at all three, I think it would be a good idea. Okay. So that would be under new business and the direction to kind of get the two together and just have another meeting. Jamie? Is that possible?
Through your miracles, that would need to be done through notice of motion at this time, as that agenda item is not on the agenda currently. So if council wants to provide direction to staff, to anyone formally to organize such a meeting, then a notice of motion would be required.
Okay.
Further to that, informally, if the board reps went back to the library board and the library board made a request to council to organize such a meeting, that could also be done as well.
That may be the most positive way of doing this. Okay. What of the discussion? It sounds like that's what we're looking for at this point. No notice of motion. Good. Announcements. That puts us through new business. Any announcements? New stuff coming up? There is one thing, just for public information out there. The Durham Cemetery Board just recently lost a member of the cemetery. Has become a resident of the cemetery, and I don't know how else to say it. Anyways, one of the board members is no longer on the board. We have put it out for advertisement for a cemetery board member. That is open till May 1st. Thank you, Ashley. Anybody that would have interest in that from the public, it would be a public appointee looking to fill that position on the cemetery board. It has become vacant. Okay. Any other announcements? No advertising for the Newstead craft show, spring craft show? Yeah, we need a little advance. Yeah, never too early to start advertising stuff. Okay. If no other announcements, closed session. We have no recommendation or no need for a closed session. Then that pretty well does the agenda. Number 18 is adjournment. I move that we adjourn. I don't move it, I declare it. From sitting from the chair, as all business has been completed. Thank you very much, everybody. And that's it. Planning meeting at 2 o'clock. Your committee of adjustments, sorry. Okay, we'll see everybody back here. As council members, from the public, I'm not sure who we'll see joining in.